We are back with another episode here on the Heart and Hustle podcast. Andy, what's good, man? How you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Got a little sun, but other than that, I'm fine.
No sun, man. That's good. Got that vitamin D, right? Is that what the sun gives
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
Enough of it, you would
yeah.
say, probably last you for
I've
the rest of
got
the month.
plenty. I could give it out.
Yo, Andy, before we get started, man, I want to start with something a little different. What is something that someone may not know about you that you truly like, you just don't share it off?
Oh man, some things people don't know about me. I got my bachelor's degree in English, which they would know that, but what they would not know is that I got distinction in prose. And so poetry, creative writing, that was where I kind of leaned into when I was going through my.
Were you ever that guy that went into the open mics and was doing some poetry or anything like that?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. Just written, just written. I was not a performer by any means. So,
Oh,
but
man.
that is what I gravitated towards was the, how does a comma affect, what is being said, and or if a semicolon's put in here, like what does that mean? So yeah, that's something a little different about me.
Was English your thing? Like going in high school, were you just kind of into English class?
But yeah, love literature.
Yeah.
Particularly American literature. My favorite book of all time is Wuthering Heights. Although that's not American literature. Wuthering Heights is my favorite. But Flannery O'Connor, Tim O'Brien, A River Runs Through It. One of my favorite books of all time. And so yeah, love literature. Shakespeare, not so much. He's not my guy. But I just love stories. I think that's something that's gravitated towards me, throughout my life, is the ability to see myself in different stories, see life in different stories. Particularly like A River Runs Through It was one that hit home in a lot of ways in terms of its symbolism of life and what that means. So
You mentioned Shakespeare. Not that the biggest fan of it either,
yeah,
but I was looking through some old things and realized I had a certificate for Shakespeare Festival that
hmm
I did. And I'm like, who chose me to go on stage and do
yeah,
some Shakespeare?
yeah,
Fun times though, man. Fun times. Were you a
yeah.
theater kid at all in school?
I was not. No. Being from a small town, we didn't have a big theater, a big theater program. And so the stories that I found, I often found in my English classes. And so I was fortunate to have, in a small town, I had a teacher that had her doctorate, had her PhD in English. And so that was not the norm. And really was able to have a foundation built by someone who loved literature as well. And so got my taste for it as a freshman in high school, and it carried through. So yeah, Dr. Jacobson, she was phenomenal.
Man, and now you're in the higher ed spaces. Do you kind of go back and say it's a little bit of her that kind of got you into the space of higher ed? How do you get into the space of higher ed? And if you could just mention the school that you're representing today.
Yeah, yeah. So currently work at Missouri Western State University, Mo West. I think that was kind of my first foray into, there was something out there past, even a bachelor's. A bachelor's we were all pretty well aware of, like, hey, go to college. But that was the first foray into, like, hey, there are doctors aside from those that check up on you, medically, out there. And so Dr. Jacobson was kind of that first taste of higher education for me. And so you know to be honest, it wasn't a career path of mine. I had a lot of really amazing high school teachers, and that was kind of the goal going into college. When I went to Ottawa University, it was okay. I'm going to get my secondary ed, degree to teach English, because that's what I love. And so was going to do that. And then as I got into it and was doing the practicums, I liked sitting in a classroom and interacting with students, but it was more so, the conversations that I was having with juniors and seniors in high school when I was doing my student teaching was, what are you going to do with your life? What's your college search look like? what schools are you looking at? What are you considering? What is it, that you're thinking about? And that was when I really started to find my footing and my passion for higher education, was having those conversations with people that are about to make a big life decision.
Yeah.
And so I found, I went off the path a little bit. I went to law school for all of 3 weeks, and realized I hated it.
Mm.
um, I sat there, and instead of like thinking about torts and contracts and all of those things, I was like, what else could I be doing besides sitting here? And I realized very quickly, I was like, that's not a life that I want to do, is like sitting there thinking about what else could I be doing. And so found myself in higher ed, very, very quickly after that, in the adult and online setting working. And that's kind of how I got my start. But it all started from, being in a classroom and having conversations with high school students.
Yeah. And did you ever become an English teacher?
I did not. I did my student teaching, and I knew that I wasn't that I didn't want to teach at that point. And so I never sat for the exam. And so never went through with it, but I did all the student teaching, did the prep and everything like that. But before I, took the test to get certified, I'd kind of identified that it wasn't going to be my path. And so I could go back, but I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at right now. So
So let me just guess. You're one of those guys that got into higher ed and never left. Is that correct to say?
that is it. Yep. Once I got my foot in, it's you love it. You love it or you hate it. That's kind of it.
What did you love about it? What was the thing that kept you in
You
love?
know, I love the transformation that comes with higher ed. And I love that it can happen at any point. It could be the first time they set foot on campus, things change. It could be their senior year, they go through a secondary ed program, and that's what they're going to do. And then they set foot in a classroom and they have a conversation with, you know, one of the students that they're teaching, and they decide they don't want to be a secondary ed teacher anymore. They don't want to be an English teacher anymore. They want to, maybe help people find that path. It could be an adult that's, you know, working, you know, nights, and they want a better life for their family, and um, they get into an online class and they realize this is going to be something that changes my life, my kid's life, and so the transformational experience that students have, that's what I love. I love that higher ed is that opportunity for change. It's a change agent for anyone and everyone that interacts with it.
How did you know this is where you wanted to be at? I mean, what was that moment that made you, whether there's a story, someone you helped along the way that said, I'm in where I should be doing?
Yeah, there's what I would say is there's every student that you interact with that you get to see walk across the stage, like that's meaningful. But there are students that you interact with on a more intimate level, in the sense that they gravitate towards you very, very early on in that kind of process, and they kind of keep coming back to you, even though you don't necessarily interact with them from an admission standpoint past the time they get here. And so
Mm.
from an admission standpoint, you know, you are helping students make a decision that hopefully, you know, leads to them walking across the stage and getting a job, and um, you know, setting foot on a path that is um different than maybe what they would have ever expected of themselves. And so, I can remember times where um I, anytime I interact with a student when I was an admissions counselor, I try to be really intentional, try to be really insightful, and serve as a guide, because wherever you're at, you want to help guide a student, whether it's at your institution or another institution. You want what's best for a student. And I can remember writing some emails that, you know, I put a lot of thought into in terms of what it meant for the student, what they were looking for, what their hopes were, what their dreams were, and really framing. um, what the college search was for them, and how I thought, Ottawa University or William Woods was that option for them, or Mo West at this point, what that means for them. Um, and so the responses that you get, like those are the times where you're like, yep, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah.
I can remember getting a 2-page email, like, and I said, I printed it off and have it in my desk, because it's like one of those where, like, this person realized, all that you put into them, and chose the institution you were at because they believed they believed in what, you know, you were positioning the university as, and they entrusted you. And that's the thing, is it's all trust. You, you have to, you have to tell them the truth, or that
Yeah.
they're not gonna feel it.
I think that's so true more now than ever when
Yeah.
there's so many options,
Hmm.
not just school options, but career options. Whether someone wants to be, an influencer, whether someone's going to pick up a trade. I think being able to trust and just understand that you also feel seen and heard.
Hmm.
You talk about curating those emails.
Yeah.
How are we doing that nowadays? Like with AI, is it easier, you would say? Is it much harder? Like,
Yeah.
where do you rely on that?
What I would say is you have to be very conscious of the use of AI. And so there are a lot of entities that that leverage AI, and there are good things about it. There are efficiencies, and there are ways that you can interact with students in a way that um, really makes sense. And so what when we talk about AI, particularly with our staff, is it's a tool. You should never just rely solely on it, because um, it misses context. There's context that doesn't happen in a system, that you have to account for. You have to account for, um, how a student feels. You have to account for um, the bottlenecks that they may be facing, that a system can't quite pick up on. If a student's struggling with finances, like, a system's not going to pick up on that necessarily. Um, and so, I mean, we leverage AI, as most institutions do, and we have great partners that have really listened to us. Capture Higher Ed is one um, that we use to kind of help us identify students that are, wanting to engage with us, and they provide pathways for us to at least begin that initial engagement with a student, and interact with them in ways that we probably wouldn't have been able to prior. Definitely wouldn't have been able to prior. But then it's up to us, and we work with them on, okay, how do we engage them? What does the conversation look like?
Hmm.
What should we be talking about based on behavior that we're seeing happen in our system, on our website, and across different mediums, to be able to really provide the student the information that they want, the relationship that they want, as they kind of move through that admissions process.
That's cool. And is that done through like SMS, email?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to communicate with students where they're at, and so we still emphasize calling within our office, because I think that a call, you may not call a student or get a hold of a student every time, but there may be that one time that a call, again, provides you more information than maybe you wouldn't have gotten via email or via text. Sometimes you can pull information out that they're not necessarily comfortable putting in a text, or comfortable putting in an email. So we communicate, call, email, text. You'll see social, interactions. There's a lot of new platforms out there that are social platforms that institutions are using, to interact with students. And so, basically any medium that you can think of, you've got to engage with them, where they're at.
Do you think that higher ed has really, it looks like based off some of the things you're telling me, has really made strides? I think a lot of people may have felt that they were behind at the times, but
Hmm.
I mean, using some technology, as you mentioned, do you feel, where's higher ed today?
Yeah, I mean, higher ed is in a space that I don't think I ever would have seen, even 15 years ago, when I kind of embarked on this journey. Um, it was calls, emails, and we were kind of getting into texting when I started 15 years ago. And so when we talk about where higher ed is now, higher ed is in a space that is completely different in terms of technology that's being used. It's definitely more what I would say business oriented in terms of how data is being tracked and leveraged to interact with um, institutions. And part of that is from the for-profit boom that happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We talk about those institutions, the University of Phoenixes and institutions like those. One thing that they do right is they do customer service right. They have to. That leads to the bottom line. And so I think that higher ed as a whole taken that has taken that to heart, in that we're a service industry, and so we have to provide we have to meet service level expectations when interacting with students. And so what does that mean? It's ever changing. Each generation, every five years or so, there's a flip in what their expectations are. And so higher ed is becoming way more what I would say flexible in terms of how we interact with students and how we service students. It's not no. It used to be the thought that higher ed adapts slower than everything else. The ones that are succeeding are the ones that are flipping the script, as they need to, very
Yeah.
very quickly.
And you mentioned speaking to the students and engaging with the students. Do you feel like it's also that we're having to engage with parents a little bit more nowadays as well? Like they're part of that process a little more?
For sure, you have to engage parents, and so whether that's email communication or mailers are still a thing. Parents still, now we're getting kind of out of that age where parents expect mail. That's not, now it's email for them. But yeah, you have to engage parents because they're part of the decision making process. We're getting to the point where students such as myself, or students, and I say students, um, parents such as myself grew up in an age where we went through the Great Recession of like 2008. And while we weren't necessarily impacted as students at the time, our parents were. And so we understand the impact that debt had on them, and the financial, burden that they maybe took. And so um, people that are my age that now have kids maybe going through college or starting that process are way more aware and cognizant of financial implications of decisions made. And so they are going to make sure that they can do what they need to set their students up, their children up, for success later in life. And so you have to be able to communicate with parents, particularly when it comes to finances, because while value proposition across the student experience is important, student affairs, academics, a lot of it comes down to what is that return on the investment for my student.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to position that and have that conversation, whether it's by email, mail, phone, whatever it is.
Is your kids actually going through the process now? I can't even
No,
imagine
no,
you have.
no,
I'm
no,
about to
no,
say I can
no,
imagine
no,
you
no,
have kids old enough. Oh, okay,
no.
okay, okay.
But I know like some of people that are my age have kids that are getting ready to go through that
Got it.
process. I've got a ways in that space. But I know people that are my age or just a little bit older that they have that happening. And so we've talked about it, just as friends. What does that look like? Um, and so that's
Andy, how does that
that's
make you actually, how does that make you feel when you think about friends that have kids going potentially to your college? Does that make you feel like you're behind the times? Did you do it right? Like,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, everyone has their own pace, in life. And so, I think, it's awesome to see, anytime I get a chance to talk with, my friends that have kids that are starting that process, that's exciting to me. Again, it's a chance for someone to go find himself. And I know that that's kind of, I've heard it that, well, college isn't necessarily to find yourself anymore, where like, you know, even when I was going to school, it's, oh, go figure out what you want to do with your life. And I, I heard it the other day, is that college isn't to find yourself anymore. And I was like, I understand that we're definitely becoming more like career focused, identifying what you want to do very, very early and not. But I still think there's something to be said about finding who you are as a person, not necessarily what you want to do, but who you are, in that college, process, in that, college experience. And so anytime, I talk with family members that are going through that process, or friends that are kind of going through that process, it's exciting. Like I just love that thought that someone's going to get to it, have an experience and find who they are.
Yeah, I think, especially, I think you mentioned that you're from a small town. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
So
Yep.
you think about someone like yourself that now goes to big university.
Yeah.
You're really finding out about the world,
A
right? Your
hundred. Yeah.
diversity, people from different walks of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
There is that, and what? Well, not may not be for everybody. I always say that leaving high school and then going to college, it's like you still kind of never leave that system because you still have people that care for you, that
Yeah.
are rooting for you.
Right.
But when you do leave high school and you don't go to college, a lot of people just fall flat on their face because now they don't have that person, that cheerleader, that person in their corner, the resources. So yeah, I definitely think that going to college allows you so much more, and put you ahead of the game for those that may not go to college. Do you agree with that? Some of those?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would say, um, the studies have shown in terms of the impact on, your lifetime earnings, what a degree does for you. But I think outside of just, even we talk about earnings, because trades are incredibly important in our society, and people can do really well financially in those spaces. And so I don't want to discredit people that don't go on to college, because I think there are ways and avenues, and I think colleges are becoming more aware that those avenues are important, and so they're trying to provide some pathways for even those people to then provide some credentialing, at the higher education level, at the second post secondary ed level. But I think there is something to be said in terms of, you get a chance to explore, to fail, in a very supportive environment, where you're going to have academic support. You're going to have, what I would deem, uh, it's student affairs support, but I would say life support, in the sense that, like, if a student's struggling personally, if they're struggling mentally, like, there are some kind of structures in place to make sure that students feel supported, in a college setting that maybe they wouldn't get elsewhere. And so I think there is something to be said about the college experience providing that, really safe environment for students to go through that exploration, maybe fail, and pick themselves up, by the time that they graduate, and now they feel really confident in who they are, what they want to do in life, and go out and do those things.
You say fail twice in that combo. Is it a good thing or a bad thing, you think?
Well, I think everyone should experience failure. I don't want everyone to experience failure, but I don't, I think it's okay to experience failure. I think through failure, um, we get a chance to learn, and I think that's, you hear that across the world, that learning happens through failure a lot of
Yeah.
times. And so, I think in a college setting, being able to fail, and knowing there is opportunity to pick yourself up, and have people walk you through what that failure was, what it meant, why it happened.
Hmm.
I think that's a really unique setting that you don't necessarily get jumping into the real world. And
Yeah.
so I think, failure can be, while it can be, you know feel like a burden, feel awful. No one wants to fail. There's the silver lining of it, and you have to be willing to see it,
Yeah.
outsiding and in, and that's the beauty of it. So,
I agree, man. I think it's such a mindset shift when we think about it. Like, there's been plenty of times that I can imagine, Andy, you failed, I failed, and the way that I look at it nowadays is like, okay, I failed, but what lesson am I learning through here? right? Like, what am I taking here out that's positive? Because we can
Yeah.
always dwell on that negative,
Yeah.
but it's really anytime, as you mentioned, you fail at anything. It's, I mean, if we're playing basketball and you lose, okay, why did we
Hmm.
lose? And
Right.
how do we get better the next time?
Yep.
And I luckily had a mentor that really taught me that at an early age when I was trying to close a cafe down. I was
Hmm.
like 20 some years old, but didn't want to close this cafe. Why? 'Cause I thought I was failing, Andy. And he was like, there's people 20, 30 years older than you that have even tried this. You know, a lot of the times we put pressure on ourselves, but we're trying for the first time. We're not going to get it right and knock it out the park. But what we could do is that every single time that something happens, we can really step back and say, okay, what do I do? What do I take out of this so that I don't make the same mistake twice, three times? And as you mentioned, college really provides you that safety net per se
Yeah.
to fail gracefully, to
Right.
have people in your corner to say, hey, yeah, you failed. No worries, man. Good job at it. Let me show you what you can do better. So that's pretty cool. Andy, what do you love to see change, man? You've been in this space for so long. You've seen changes, but can imagine there's still some changes that you want to see. What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think within a higher ed, I think um, when we talk about changes, I think that we're seeing this shift to really focus in on workforce development, which I think is um, it's kind of a necessity. We need to hone in and we need to align ourselves with industry, and we need to be able um, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our communities, meeting the needs of um, the economy and the nation in terms of kind of where we're looking to go. But I think the one piece that I would hope when we talk about changes is that there's always that personal development component as part of whatever curriculum or experience that students go through. That I sometimes feel like we're getting away from that, and we're saying, okay, what do they want to do? We're going to put them on that path, and that's what it is. And so I think for me, I don't know that it's a change that I would implement in higher ed. More so that I hope we can hold on to that piece, that there's that still that component of that personal development outside of just career development that we maintain. Because I think that it is one thing to know your job, know what you do, know how to do it. And I think it's another to be able to know who you are as a person, um, how to interact with people, know how to communicate with people. And so that personal development side, making sure that that's, a key component throughout a student experience.
I love it. And I just, as we wrap it up, what is just that one advice that someone's given you in your life that still to this day just kind of comes back?
Um, I think when we talk about advice, the one that always comes back to me, because I'm a creature of habit. I can get very comfortable, um, and um, and I can be okay with being where I'm at, and I continually have to remind myself to push myself. But as I transition away from my alma mater to set foot on kind of a new path, the person that is now my mentor, but who I was interviewing with, and we'd kind of had to come to a conversation about what a transition away would look like. Was look through the book of Andy Otto, and see if that chapter has been written. Have you written your chapter? Have you kind of come to a conclusion? And is it time to move on to a next? And so, being really introspective in terms of, where you're at in life and what you've done, come to an understanding of, are you ready to push yourself onto the next chapter? Is it time? And so being self-aware in that space. And so, my mentor, Dr. Ted Blashak, really kind of pushed me to examine who I was, where I was at in my career, and to be self-aware and knowing like, okay, I've kind of done what I can do now. Now it's time for that next chapter.
Yeah, gotta spread your wings, man.
Yep.
Gotta get uncomfortable
Yep.
sometimes, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we're just too comfortable.
Yep.
Andy, where can people find more information about the university? Are you guys on social?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can get on social, look up Mo West. And so we're all over, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever other socials are out there. MissouriWestern.edu. You can find our stuff there. And so we try to be really engaging and provide a lot of really good stories, to, provide insight into, you know, who we are, who our students are, who our faculty and staff are, because again, stories are what, people resonate with. And so, our social team does a really, really good job. So check us out on all those.
Andy, thank you so much for your time, my brother, for just the insights you've given us today from a leader, someone that just fell in love with school and never left, to be quite frank. We just thank you for all the insights. My name is Efrain. This is Andy. Make sure you guys go ahead and pick them up on the socials, on the website. We'll catch you on the next one. Later.